is Nigel May from MHA. I'm joined this afternoon by two of my colleagues, Patrick King and Tony Metcalf, to talk about the consequences of today's budget. It seems amazing that it is less than a year since Rishi Sunak delivered his first budget. What a lot has happened and what a strange set of circumstances we've found ourselves in. It seems to me that the Chancellor has had almost the perfect storm to deal with today, from a viewpoint of having to restart a febrile economy, raise revenue, and protect jobs at the same time. Quite a lot was said. It was probably one of the more interesting budgets of recent years. From a big picture viewpoint, Patrick, what did you make of it?
Well, yes, as you say, quite a lot was said. I think from our discussion so far today, I think the view we are taking, certainly the view I take, is he's not made a bad hash of it, has he? He's had a good go. He's got a big vision. It's long term, and he is making some fairly big, sweeping commitments and changes to the way we're doing things. The introduction of Freeports, so on. It's quite innovative.
And Tony, with regards to the numbers and where we can see government spending going, what sort of picture did you get from today?
Yeah, again, that's an interesting point, isn't it? There's been a lot of talk about the debt that's been created as a consequence of dealing with the coronavirus and actually how we're going to deal with it. The focus principally, when you look at the numbers, is actually on making sure that expenditure is just balanced over the next 6 years. So many of the tax rises and the indications of what they will raise, should I say, match effectively the expenditure this year on coronavirus. And almost the expenditure last year is being parked within national debt. So I thought that was a very interesting point. And one thing Patrick mentioned was that the GDP ratios were just hovering below the 100% level. So I think, again, an indication that he's trying to get us to grow out of the problems.
The 100% figure seems to be sort of like the magic number now, doesn't it? That's what seems to have come out. But there's very little sign of debt repayment. Patrick, any sign as to where that's going to come from?
Well, yes, as Tony was saying, it's quite interesting. If you look at the 5 or the 6 year period that the Chancellor set out, the tax rises caused by, as we'll talk about later, but restrictions in allowance and so on, more or less make up for the expenditure or the increases in expenditure for the current year. The projections that Mr. Sunak suggested, where we were hoping to be, were that I think the debt maxes out at about 97 point something %, and then towards the end of his 5 or 6 year period started to very, very slowly decline. We have to assume, I think, that there will be other tax raising measures, perhaps in a budget later this year and in future budgets. But as set out at the moment, there's no clear guide to how that's going to be reduced anytime soon.
It seemed to me that there's reliance on the preservation of low interest rates and the growth of the economy. Tony, did you think that this was a budget for growth?
Oh, very much so. A lot of it was full of optimism. Patrick mentioned before the idea of Freeports, levelling up, protecting jobs. I think it was infrastructure expenditure focused primarily on growth, and that I think we've seen in the press that the country has not got the stomach for a long period of austerity. So effectively, growth is the way out of this, and obviously with growth comes higher tax revenue that enable us to carry forward. So I definitely see it was quite a very encouraging budget from Mr. Sunak.
And levelling up, we had the Northern powerhouse of George Osborne's era, We now have levelling up. One of the things I thought was interesting was, and we'll deal with Freeports later on, but the Freeports announced seem to be strewn quite liberally around England. You know, Tony, I know you covered the Northwest and Liverpool is there. Teesside is mentioned, but, you know, Patrick, what did you make of that? I thought levelling up was going to be more northern focused, and maybe for us in the south, the fact that you know, this does seem, the largesse is being spread, is good news.
Well, I think so. Yes, I mean, I think there's a slight majority of the Freeports, I think, that would be regarded as in the north, but there are certainly some in the south. Probably in, perhaps with the exception of Thameside, although that covers a wide area, areas that are you know, relatively needing a bit of extra support. And so I think there's sense in it. It's certainly not the case that the north is the only place where there is economic problems. We know that London and the area around London is seen as the area where we have the most wealth, and it's clearly the case. But if you go in any direction from that to any distance, you do run into areas where some support is required.
I think it's interesting on that, really, though, in the almost, and Mr. Sunak mentioned it in the budget. He said that Freeports, whilst they are reasonably common around the world, their approach to them is different. They're almost a epicenter of regeneration. Not just an ability for, you know, duty-free holding of goods and moving of goods, etc. It's actually, you know, a focus of regeneration. So I think in some respects, you know, whether levelling up means the north-south divide, it just means more deprived areas, yeah, rather than maybe the City of London, for example. So I think it's a good move.
From a big picture viewpoint, were there any things that you thought were strangely omitted, or is that an unfair question?
I think that he tackled most things. He dealt with dealing with the runoff of coronavirus. He dealt with assisting and actually, you know, making it clear to people that we've all got to shoulder the burden somehow in relation to paying things back. And he had a clear vision as to how, what he wants the UK to be. You know, the green agenda, leading technology, leading science. He wants us to be a vibrant, world outwardly looking country. So
And Patrick, the green side of things, I thought was quite interesting that it came out, because I remember David Cameron saying that his government was going to be the greenest government in history or something like that. But green policies seem to have been pre-COVID in the background. I thought it was quite interesting that these came forward again. Any thoughts?
Well, I think it's all part of the growth agenda, isn't it? I mean, we know that the green is going to be popular going forward. We know that the UK has set carbon neutral targets in the not too distant future. They're very ambitious targets, and the world as a whole is moving in that direction. So it's not surprising that there's a lot of focus on promoting that side, so offshore wind and so on. There's a lot of effort going into promoting that and the high value jobs that come with it. And going back to your question as to what perhaps wasn't there today, I think we were all expecting, perhaps not immediately, but we were all expecting some reference to other tax raising measures, pensions, capital tax, and so on. But perhaps we'll see them later.
Okay, now that's really interesting. So I think the consensus appears to be, you know, really quite positive. That you know, a well thought out budget. Seemingly, you know, appeared well presented and to be welcomed. You mentioned, Patrick, the tax changes. Just from a digestion viewpoint, we are going to come back to the tax changes in the following video. In the meantime, just thank you. I've taken you off piste. You know, we're all tax people here, and we've been talking about the bigger picture thing. But in today's environment, I think the big picture, needs to be understood and appreciated. And, thanks for your time on that. The information with regards to the budget is going to be included on our website, www.mha-uk.co.uk. But as I say, if you're looking for details about the tax changes, that will follow on the next video. In the meantime, thank you for listening. Again, my name's Nigel May. Thank you again to Patrick and to Tony for their input. Really appreciate it.